Hello everybody and welcome to this month's question and answers with myself, Michelle Brooks, and the lovely Dr. Victoria Baxter. So today we are going to cover something that was asked, well, something that comes up quite often in my work that I want to ask Victoria. So before I go any further, hello Victoria, how's it going?
Hello. Yeah, very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm really well, thanks. So Victoria, I work with a lot of people. I do various things with them. I give them nutrition plans. I do like a challenge on Facebook called Beat the Bloat. And I do like personal training along with a lot of other stuff. And what I find that happens a lot in my work, especially I think with the work with women with endometriosis, is that they actually show a lot of resistance when it comes to following something that, is going to help them and benefit their health. So, I mean, it's something that I can't get my head around, and maybe you as a clinical psychologist can like give me some insight into this, that when something is going to benefit your health so much, why do people show so much resistance?
It's a really good question, and I must say it probably makes up 80% of the people I work with, and if anything I kind of couch it like that, really, with this is a good indication of that there might be something worthwhile thinking about from like a holistic biopsychosocial approach when it comes to behavior change, because you're right, it happens all the time, isn't it? And so often people say to me, like, I know what I need to do to get healthy, I know what I should do, but I'm not doing it. And this is, so it is the key thing really that I explore with people. As always, I'm afraid I can't give you a simple answer because we are complex beings, and we will all have lots of different reasons for experiencing this. But I'm happy to share some of the more common like reasons, more frequently experienced things that come up in my practice. So sometimes this is my personal one that kind of got me into this particular specialty in the first place, which is I don't like to be told what to do. So I am a bit of a control freak. So there are some people out there who, we all lie on a spectrum as such as to how in control of things we need to feel in order to feel okay in the world, how much uncertainty and unpredictability we can tolerate before we start to kind of feel anxious. For those of us like myself who maybe are at an end of that where we like things to feel okay and we're on top of things, we probably also like to feel that we're in control of things. And so when information is presented to us, if it is couched in a way of being told what to do, it can be hard to take that on because it kind of can jar with this idea of I'm in control of my life and my, and we call it like your sense of agency. So, if you have a strong sense of agency that I can make changes, you kind of work best with information when it's couched to you as education. So that's the kind of approach that I need personally to be able to make changes. Is I'm kind of like, I'm really keen to learn from people who know what they're talking about, and then I will take that and do with it as I wish, thanks, and won't be told what to do. As you probably know, because we work together, haven't we? So sometimes for some people it's like the delivery of information, and like I say, if there's something there about feeling that there's an authority figure, we can have that natural difficulty with authority figures for various reasons, and this being just one of them. Also, another common one that comes up is not necessarily having that sense of agency. So for some people, it's a very different experience where we maybe feel that we need to be told what to do. We need to be guided. We need to be accountable to someone. And what that can sometimes tell us when we look deeper within is that maybe within ourselves, we don't have a very strong sense of being able to take control and be effective in making change. Like maybe the vehicle for change in our lives has usually sat externally to us. So maybe kind of like, I don't know, getting good results at school might be attributed to having a parent or a teacher that's been bearing down on you, pushing you. So that's just one hypothesis, but for all sorts of reasons, so usually stemming from things, the way we've experienced the world as we've been growing up, for all sorts of reasons. Some people can be left with a feeling, and this will be totally subconscious, I must clarify, just be outside of our conscious awareness, maybe a sense of, and this can sometimes tie in with a sense of hopelessness of, I can't do that. As much as I want to, me, myself on my own, couldn't do that. And I sometimes see that as well, showing up as like a bit of an all or nothing experience for people. So maybe when they first start off working with someone, they are like the perfect student, you know, taking it all on board, and really engaged, genuinely really interested, genuinely really want to do this and motivated. But then maybe as life carries on, and maybe as we're needed to do this for ourselves and independent of another, or just as things come up that maybe throw us off track, it can catapult us to another end of a scale where it feels very hopeless. Like I've lost a grip of that was guiding me, and now I'm on my own with this, and I feel quite hopeless and maybe a bit anxious about doing it on my own. So it might, but like I say, all this stuff is just outside of your awareness. So to ask someone outright, you know, why aren't you doing it? Probably wouldn't be able to answer that. And again, and that if anything feeds into maybe a sense of frustration and maybe a sense of hopelessness of, I just don't know, because I really want to do this and I know what I should be doing and I'm not sure. And another thing that often comes up, sometimes linked with this, is almost like a bit of a self-sabotage cycle. So it can be sometimes that the anxiety that any of these scenarios throws up, behavior change, any kind of change, can be anxiety provoking, and the anxiety that these things throw up can be so unsettling that sometimes we want to revert back to default where we know it's safe. So we might be doing quite well on something, but that might have a ripple effect, or we just maybe start to develop a bit of a new identity, you know, like, oh, this is feeling really great, I'm this healthy person, but it can just feel a bit unsettling, that like, this isn't me, you know, maybe this is the first time in my life that I've took control of something, and that in itself can feel scary because I'm not used to that, and therefore sometimes we can put barriers, you know, sabotage our own efforts, and we end up in a familiar place where, oh well, I knew I couldn't really do it anyway, you know.
Yeah, and I guess it's your job as a psychologist to find out where that person is and what they are resisting. So how would you kind of find that out from a client? What kind of questions would you ask to find those kind of things out of why they're self-sabotaging or why they're resisting this help?
Well, it usually takes quite a number of sessions to have a look back over someone's life with them, really, and make sense of their experiences, the kind of person they are, and the kind of child they were, the kind of people were around them, and what the world was like for them as they were growing up, and help make sense of where someone's come from and who and how that's impacted. And usually through that process, people come to their own insights of maybe recognizing some patterns, some themes, so particularly maybe some themes in how they relate to other people and themselves. And food often fits in there because food and other like substances that alter the brain, basically, because food is a chemical substance that has an impact on the brain as much as others. So food, alcohol, other nicotine, you know, other substances. We have a relationship with these things, so we can look back over, say, over lifespan and look at maybe particular things that have gone on. For some people, sometimes it's really quite clear. Some people come to me saying, I'm pretty sure it's to do with this, and they want to go back and they want to explore a particular time in their life and maybe let go of something that they're holding on to that might be felt to be a barrier to change now. For other people, they don't have, it's really not obvious, and they're just interested to see if anything can be brought from that subconscious into the conscious awareness. And even just by doing that, it then puts you in a very different place. It can increase that sense of agency that I was talking about, so increase someone's confidence to be able to change, and it can set you up with some practical skills, really, to be able to make change independently and for the longer term, and help break down any of that resistance. But it's an interesting word for it. Sorry, just the fact that that's how it shows up to you, you feel it, and it's interesting. And often we're working with what we're feeling in the room. It's interesting.
I'm training at the minute to be a spiritual life coach, and I mean, I'm only quite early on in the course, but we're like taught to ask the right questions and for that client to find the answers within them. It's like not for you to suggest what it is that's the problem, or even if you can kind of see it or feel it, it's for them to tell you what the problem is and not for you to put the words into their mouth, kind of thing. And I guess it's then what you're saying, isn't it? That you can just have to sit with them and wait till it kind of comes apparent to them.
And sometimes I'm very visual, just personally, kind of in how I learn and how I like to communicate. So I'll often draw things out with someone, you know, just draw little kind of roadmaps as such, and timelines, and there's a couple of models I like which are quite nice and visual to make sense of things. And so by mapping things out together and being able to look at this together, often together, there is stuff that emerges. But like you say, it's for the person to consolidate that as such.
And I guess like my frustration is because I know my program works, especially when I'm working with endometriosis, and yet obviously it's a completely different way of working for some individuals, and it can be met with a lot of resistance. And I have to be very patient, because I know that if they do what I'm asking, then it's going to come to that end result and they're going to feel a lot better, but I can't make them do it. And if they meet resistance on the way, then there's nothing I can do about that either. I just have to be there and kind of like meet them with, well, what can we do to change things now? What can we do to move forward? Rather than it being a linear process of like, here's the plan, this is what you're going to follow, and there's the end point. It kind of goes like this in between. And we have to make adjustments as to how they're feeling. So whilst I write a plan for somebody and it is individual, then it often has to change in between anyway, because of that resistance that particular client might be meeting along the way.
And it's interesting, the whole topic of change is fascinating, because people naturally come to you because they're struggling with something and they want some help. And you know, we want that, you know, on a conscious level, there's probably an awareness that something needs to change, and there's an appreciation for your knowledge and skills and information that you can provide. But actually deep down, whether or not there is the both the willingness and the ability to make the change on more of an emotional level is often like might determine how effective that is.
There's a lot involved as well. It's like I advise people that with endo, you know, it's not great to, you know, have alcohol at the time, especially as it coming up to the time of the month. And you know, I have successfully worked my whole social calendar around my time of the month, and I know like that I look at my diary when somebody asks me to do something, and I'll go, oh, actually no, I can't that week, and I just don't book anything in, and that works really well for me. But you know, if somebody else isn't willing to do that or not able to do that, then I can't then say, well, you must do that. It's for that person to decide. And I find that often is like the biggest resistance that I get with my program, is that, oh, well, I can't not do that, or I can't do that piece of work that week and put it off till next week. It's really hard to like get people to realize that the benefits will only come with the changes that you make, but the actual changes are so hard to put into place because it's something that you're not used to doing. And it's like maybe like breaking it down into smaller chunks, like let's just try not doing one thing this month, and then next month we'll add another thing, and then another thing, and try, instead of trying to do everything all at once. Some people are great, they're like all or nothing kind of person, and they're like, yep, let's do it all. And then others are like, well, no, I think I might need to try this first or that. But you just got to really adapt, haven't you, as you go along with each individual client.
And you've just made me think of something quite key there, actually, about how when there is maybe something that's getting in the way of making small, like micro changes, you know, it might be something around, well, we all, if we're faced with a choice to make, we all have the potential that we could be hooked away from doing what matters. And those hooks are usually involve strong feelings of some sort, and like maybe belief systems that we have, fears is often a common one.
Yeah.
So when just hearing you say kind of like, oh, the approach you've taken, Michelle, is to, if you're invited out, you'll say, oh, sorry, I can't do that weekend. How about this weekend instead? That tells me that, you know, you're someone who can quite confidently assert what you need, and you know, you're expecting to be met with what's the word, cooperation. You're expecting to be met with courtesy and respect, and for the other person to liaise with you. But even to have that kind of outlook relies on you having quite a good sense of your own self-esteem, really. So very often, if we're asking someone to say no to something, or rejig how they do something which might have an impact on another person, or impact on their own sense of responsibility, then what that means and says about them can show up. So if it's kind of like, well, I couldn't ask my friend, you know, I couldn't say no to my friend and suggest another weekend, you know, like some people would find that really, really difficult, and because of the own anxiety it raises in them about what it might say about them as a person if they were to do that. And so these are the kind of things I often explore with people, like what's hooking you away from making these changes. That's another way in to look at things together. Yeah,
and I think as well, for me, that has been something that I have worked on, because I wouldn't say that I'd always been like that either, but for me, and again, it's, I think, like going through your own values and what's important to you, isn't it? And I think that when you work with somebody, you've got to understand that as well, what is important to them. Important to me, first and foremost, obviously, is my family, but my health comes first, you know, first and foremost. And if your friends are good enough friends, they will understand why that needs to happen. So it's taken a long time, I think, for myself to actually assert that, like you say. And I think it's important to remember it when you are working with others, that not everybody's at that level yet.
Not everybody.
And maybe need to work towards that.
And again, where people want to, I mean, you can work at that here and now level, but where people want to maybe think about, well, why am I like that? That's where it can get really interesting to think back to, well, why do I expect another person to look down on me if I said no to them? Why would I expect, or why would you, Michelle, expect cooperation? You know, what experience have you had to tell you that people are generally cooperative and respectful, versus someone who maybe other experiences might have taught them that people can be judgmental and usually aren't very cooperative, or, you know. So yeah, it can get interesting, but it's also not necessary always to go back and look at that stuff. You can just accept this is how things are now. What can I do to change and go forward? You don't have to always look back deeply, but most people I work with choose to. And I guess if you're the kind of person that's going to see a psychologist, you're probably interested in your own makeup.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. I think we obviously, as usual, got into a big debate about that. And that's what I love about these chats.
Never simple with me.
Even if no one listens to it, I like having the chats anyway. I learn a lot, I think. And I hope that somebody does listen to it and can take something from it too. If listeners, you do have any questions for us, for either of us, then please do pop them in the comments below, and we will be sure to cover it on the next episode of this Q&A that we do monthly. Right, well, thanks, Victoria, as usual, and I'll see you on the next one.
See you soon. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.